Vice President Kamala Harris just speaking at the White House after meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, these remarks were not originally on her schedule, and they were actually more extensive remarks than President Biden made after his meeting with Netanyahu. Harris revealing details about what she called a frank conversation with the Israeli Prime Minister, and she made it clear that she wants an end to the war in Gaza.
As I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home, and let's provide much-needed relief to the Palestinian people. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
Today's meeting comes as her campaign is getting a boost from a new poll by the New York Times. And what this showed was Harris narrowing the gap against Trump. Now, Trump got a post-convention bounce, but when you look at it all in aggregate, Harris is now 4 points ahead of where Biden was polling in the same poll before he dropped out, which puts the race in a statistical dead heat, 48 to 47. Now, we'll see. Does she just continue to surge up or not? Obviously, you haven't had the convention bounce from the Democrats yet. The poll does show Harris making strides with groups that Biden had been struggling with, which includes perhaps most notably young voters. 56% of those between the ages of 18 and 29 back Harris, which is 16 percentage points more than Biden. That's a pretty stunning number. Independents, 45. Biden had 37 there, so doing significantly better there as well. And with Latinos, 57% back her, it was 41% for Biden. So that is obviously dramatic. In electoral politics in the United States, it doesn't get more dramatic than that. In fact, it's unprecedented for anything to move like that. So that's the reality of the situation. The question is it for now or forever? But you do see that energy in the Harris campaign events that we've seen so far, too, what they've been getting in terms of the boost from the polls. Today, Harris speaking to an energized group of voters from the American Federation of Teachers.
While you teach students about democracy and representative government, extremists attack the sacred freedom to vote. Just think about it. So we want to ban assault weapons, and they want to ban books. In this moment, we are in a fight for our most fundamental freedoms. And to this room of leaders, I say, bring it on. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Those three words now have been sort of a mantra, bring it on. The same message that she had for Trump today when she told reporters she's ready to debate the former president.
Many of you have been asking me about the debate, and I'll tell you, I'm ready to debate Donald Trump. I have agreed to the previously agreed upon September 10th debate. He agreed to that previously. Now it appears he's backpedaling, but I'm ready.
MJ Lee is out front live outside the White House to begin our coverage tonight. MJ, Vice President Harris delivering this address tonight. It's significant. Wouldn't usually necessarily be in the meeting and certainly not make comments afterwards as a VP, but this is now a completely new situation, right? And it was a moment for her to make a foreign policy statement, also a campaign moment outside the White House.
Yeah, you're totally right about that, Erin. I think the last 2 hours gave us a really clear window into how the vice president is very quickly trying to shift gears and adjust to this new role that was thrust upon her just 4 days ago. CNN was TV pool for this meeting between the vice president and the prime minister. And typically, as you know, what happens is a small group of reporters goes into the room. We get a shot of the two leaders meeting, and then we're quickly brought out, and that's it. But instead, the small group of reporters in that room, we were taken to a holding room, and we were told by the vice president's team that she is actually going to deliver remarks as soon as that bilateral meeting wrapped up, which, as you point out, is not typical. Clearly, this was the vice president wanting to seize this moment that she was in, and the fact that the prime minister was in town and had met with her to put her own marker down on one of the most difficult foreign policy issues that she is set to inherit from the president if she were to go on to win the presidency. One senior official I was talking to right after the remarks said there was no question that this was a part of the vice president in the recent days trying to really prove herself in a different way. They described it as the vice president putting a punctuation mark at the end of a really eventful and important day. And just keep in mind, Erin, up until Sunday, Israel was one of the biggest issues where whenever it came up, the White House would say there is no daylight between the vice president and the president. And I do think this is going to be a really important space to watch to see if in the coming days and in the coming weeks, we do start to see a little bit more daylight creep in between the two.
All right, MJ, thank you very much. And here for our conversation, instead, let me just start with you. It is, interesting how quickly she was able to seize that moment, right? A moment where, because of being vice president, she can be in that room and then look like a commander in chief, right? And to take that, and she did it, and she seized it, and she went immediately to do that. So, what are you hearing from your sources to this fundamental question? And I know there's not necessarily a definitive answer right now, but is this burst of exuberance and poll surge, does it have longevity?
Yeah, I think that's what folks are looking at. But I think you point out an important point. Harris gets the benefits of incumbency as she's in the office right now, because I think we're going to see the White House intentionally lean on her in these big moments to be able to show her someone who's grown over the past several years. I remember when I was reporting on her last year, they would make a point to say that she was more respected globally than even she was appreciated domestically by Democrats. And that's been a place where she's seen a lot of emphasis. I think they're going to try to roll that out. And I do think that even if the policy and differences between her and Biden and Gaza are small, the rhetorical differences and the kind of empathy for Palestinians that she's made a point to show over the last several months might be the kind of tonal difference you see between her and at the top. But to the point about does this last, part of that is the question of whether she can capitalize the upside that she clearly has in differences from Biden. The groups that are most marginal Democratic voters, younger people, Black and Latinos, folks who are outside the process, they're clearly more favorably see her than Joe Biden. The question will be, does that turn into preference that actually moves votes consistently? Right. And I think that's going to have a policy question behind it that we haven't really gotten to yet.
Right. Now, and Alyssa, to this point about commander-in-chief, and Netanyahu happens to be the man of the moment. The commander-in-chief got a meeting, the would-be Democratic commander-in-chief, and now, of course, he is going to go meet Trump tomorrow at Mar-a-Lago. So he's going down there, and that's significant. What are the optics of that, especially when Trump came out and actually said, thought it was interesting, they got a PR problem. Israel, you need to wrap this up, Bibi, basically.
Well, this underscores how much the whole world is kind of caught flat-footed by what happened, that it was going to be Joe Biden. Netanyahu came to give this address yesterday thinking it was Trump versus Joe Biden, and now you've got Kamala Harris as the person running. I think it was incredibly savvy of her to give these remarks, and I would say this, they were nuanced. There was a little something for everything. She condemned sexual violence by Hamas. She said it committed unwavering support, but then also leaned into saying she recognizes the plight of the Palestinians. This is, I think, where most of the country is, and something that Joe Biden has kind of struggled to articulate during this crisis. It'll be interesting to see how tomorrow goes. There's a lot of bad will, I would say, between Trump and Netanyahu. Trump never got over the fact that he congratulated Joe Biden when he won the election. But I also think that that relationship can be healed.
David, so let's just throw the poll up again from the New York Times. That's the one that shows Harris statistically tied with Trump. He gets a post-convention bounce. She gets obviously significantly more than that because Biden was down 6 points in the same poll. So what do you think, David, in terms of how real this is? I mean, it's a moment in time. Is it more than that?
Well, I think it's real. The question is it sufficient? What she is doing is she's beginning to coalesce the Democratic base that helped elect Biden 4 years ago, and that Democrats need to win national elections. And that includes enthusiasm and participation and support from younger voters, from the African-American community, from Hispanic voters. She's doing better than Joe Biden was. Those voters were drifting away from him, which accounted for a lot of his problems. So that is a good sign. And the fact that she's closed this gap so handsomely in just a few days is a good sign. But if the election were today, she'd still lose, and she'd probably lose by a significant margin in the Electoral College, because Democrats have to be ahead in the national poll to win because of the way population is distributed around the country. But this is certainly good news for her. And the question is, can she expand beyond it? One other point, she does open up new fronts in the electoral map. You know, one of the reasons why she has suffered in the Sunbelt states is loss among African-American voters, loss among Hispanic American voters in places like Nevada and Arizona, even New Mexico. And the fact that she's doing better among those voters is a good sign that she might be able to fight her way back into those states, and that would give her more options on the path to 270 electoral votes.
Mayor Bottoms, you know, do you think that opening of the electoral map, I mean, how huge do you think this is going to be for her? I mean, Biden had essentially given up on, I think it's fair to say, North Carolina. I would say Georgia too. And now, are these really states she can win?
Absolutely. No one believed that we could win Georgia in 2020, and here we are. And in fact, the vice president is returning to Georgia again on Tuesday. She has been here multiple times. There was a whole list put in today's Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper of all of the visits that she's made to Georgia. And she's not only focused just on Atlanta, but also some of the metro areas and some of the other cities in the state. Specifically, she's gone to Gwinnett County, where there's a lot of diversity in Gwinnett County. And I believe right now in Georgia, 34% of the electorate is African American. So that's going to make a significant difference, having her at the top of the ticket. And the enthusiasm is very real here.
New tonight, Kamala Harris turning to Beyonce for her first campaign ad as the presumptive Democratic nominee, arguing that this race is all about freedom.
The freedom not just to get by, but get ahead. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom to make decisions about your own body. We choose a future where no child lives in poverty, where we can all afford health care, where no one is above the law.
But will Harris and her message resonate with swing voters? The swing voters that she needs to win over. Nick Valencia is in Georgia tonight for the latest in our Voters Out Front series.
If the election were held today, Margarita Eberline doesn't know who she'd vote for. The elevation of Vice President Kamala Harris in the race hasn't made things any clearer for her.
No, it's not exciting to me. It's not like, oh, wow, the easy answer. It's not an easy choice for me. It still isn't. People are assuming that because I'm a Latina woman that, oh, I'm going to be excited about her. And it's not that easy for me because I worry about character. We had somebody that was the right hand of somebody that was not healthy who was silent about it, and that concerns me.
Eberline lives in Gwinnett County, a key suburban county in a swing state, where she believes her vote is more consequential than ever. In a recent memo, Vice President Harris's campaign said it sees securing swing voters like Eberline as part of a pathway to victory.
Do you think a lot of people are burned out with politics at this point?
Absolutely.
In 2020, Joe Biden won Georgia by less than 12,000 votes, becoming the first Democratic presidential candidate to carry the state since 1992. But in 2024, we're finding that Democrats have their work cut out for them if they're hoping for a repeat.
How has it changed your opinion seeing her as a potential nominee for the Democrats?
Oh, yeah, 50-50.
50-50?
Yeah.
You still have to learn more and research more.
Yes.
If the election was today, you wouldn't know which way you would vote.
I am so in doubt right now. But give me a place about 3 months. We'll be ready.
It's not like, I want to vote for her because she's black. That's not the reason. This year is just because just to make sure Trump is not elected.
What makes you want to vote for Trump?
Aber Martinez doesn't need any more time to make up his mind. He saw our camera and shouted Trump 2024.
I'd rather vote for Trump, no matter what. They're going to keep bringing the liberal agenda, and I'm not for it. I'm just sorry.
For Margarita Eberline, some progressive policies are troubling, but it's Trump's rhetoric, specifically on immigration, that makes it hard for her to support him.
I'm a conservative person, and I just cannot make peace with anybody that uses hatred in their rhetoric and that uses division as a strategy. And I really struggle.
Eberline also questions whether either outcome will even make a difference for her and her family.
I'm not from a privileged background. I was the first in my family to go to college. and I went to a really good university and all of that. And I feel like I've checked all the boxes, but relatively speaking, like my life's not easy. And no matter who wins, the financial implications are not necessarily going to be easy for me.
Overall, our biggest takeaway in talking to voters throughout the day is just the overall lack of enthusiasm about the upcoming election. Voters just aren't animated in the same way they were 4 years ago. And for as instrumental as Georgia was in 2020 for Joe Biden, what's clear to us, Erin, is that Democrats are fighting against a lot here in 2024, and Vice President Harris's name just hasn't injected that excitement into swing voters. Erin?
Very interesting. All right, thank you very much. And let's go now to the Democratic governor of Colorado, Erin Burnett. And Governor, I appreciate your time. It was very interesting what Nick just said. And I know it's early, but obviously we have seen that pop in the polls already. The woman he was speaking to, Margarita Eberline, she said, people assume because I'm a Latina woman, I'm going to be excited. But Harris right now, she said, she's not exciting to me. Do things like that, do reports like this give you any pause of concern?
No, let's talk about different groups of voters. And I certainly hear from a lot in Colorado. We're a politically diverse state as well, Republican representatives, Democratic representatives. First of all, Democrats are excited. So you find people that were saying, I'm voting for Joe Biden, but I'm not sure about it, or I'm doing it to stop Trump. Now they have somebody to vote for, right? A powerful vision to protect our freedoms for our future. Now let's talk about those undecided voters, right? People that for months had been saying, oh, I don't know, I don't like Donald Trump, I don't like Joe Biden. Now there is somebody new. There is that new option. She has to introduce herself and close the deal. And she has the skills to do it. The more people get to know her, they see she's smart, they see she's on top of it, and they see that she has a powerful vision for moving our country forward and protecting our freedom.
So just a few hours ago, the House, and in that number, Governor, there were 6 Democrats. They voted to rebuke Vice President Harris over the administration's handling of the southern border. And I want to ask you about this because the border crisis, of course, is something you know very well in Colorado. Denver's got, more than 40,000 migrants since the start of last year. That's 5% of the overall city population of the entire city of Denver. It's cost $58 million. That's a lot of money that could have gone, I'm sure, to some really important needs that Denver already had. Are you worried about what immigration could do as an issue to Vice President Harris?
Well, I think more and more people are realizing that Donald Trump is to blame for the lack of border security. We had a solid bipartisan bill. Republicans, Democrats investing in border security, locking down the border. And guess what? The Republicans in the House aren't even allowing it to come to a vote. They refuse to pass it. Absent congressional action and investment in border security, there's only so much any president can do beyond rhetoric. And frankly, with President Biden's action that he's taken, the influx of immigrants is down 55% at the border. So they made some progress, but they need Congress to lock down that border and secure it and pass immigration reform.
Now, Governor, you've said you'd take a serious look at being Kamala Harris's running mate if asked. And I know you've been humorous about it in some senses. However, if this happened, okay, if it's you and you are vice presidential nominee Jared Polis, you will be against J.D. Vance. And he is seeing, obviously, a lot of controversial comments he made reemerge, childless cat ladies among them. Here are some of the others.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. It's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
Governor Polis, what would you say to Vance if you were on the same stage as him?
Well, first of all, look, of all the people in the country that Donald Trump could have chose, this reflects his judgment. He chose J.D. Vance. This is not somebody who is a normie. He's not a normal person. You don't attack people, whether they have cats or dogs. Some people have kids, some people have dogs and cats, we have 2 kids and a dog. I mean, I'm allergic to cats, or I'd probably have a cat too. Why are politicians talking about that? What the American people want to hear is your plan for reducing costs, for improving education, for growing our economy. That's what we should be talking about, not attacking different kinds of families just because you don't like cats or dogs or whatever it is.
All right. Well, Governor Polis, I appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Signaling that it's game on. This from the vice president on the subject of debates.
I have agreed to the previously agreed upon September 10th debate. He agreed to that previously. Now it appears he's backpedaling, but I'm ready. And I think the
Voters deserve to see the split screen that exists in this race on a debate stage. And so I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, prior to President Biden dropping out of the race, the two campaigns had agreed to a debate hosted by ABC on September 10th. Vice President Harris did not elaborate today on whether she would accept a debate between her and former President Trump for September 17th, proposed now by Fox News. The former president, on a press call with reporters earlier this week, said he wants to debate her but has not yet agreed to anything. He was off the trail today but did phone in this morning to Fox.
They say, sir, you just got hit with a bullet. Maybe he's changed. Be nice. And I'd love to be nice, but I'm dealing against real garbage. And she was a prosecutor, but she was a failed prosecutor. She put a lot of people in jail that should have never been there. She put people in jail that were political enemies. She's bad news. She's a radical, very smart person.
Mr. President,
she failed her bar exam. She couldn't even pass her bar exam.
So
it was brutal on her. She
speaking
couldn't
of,
pass it. She thought she'd never be able to pass it. This is what we have as our next president?
Well, keeping him honest, Ms. Harris failed her first time, then passed on her next try, and it's not uncommon to fail California's bar exam. At least one state Supreme Court justice flunked it, William Clark, who went on to be a top advisor in the Reagan administration, and the state's Republican governor in the 1990s, Pete Wilson, didn't pass till his fourth try. But back to today, as we said at the top, new polling shows how tight the race now is. It's from the New York Times. It shows Vice President Harris up 6 points from President Biden's performance, but still within the margin of error. Joining us now, CNN political commentators from across the partisan spectrum, Scott Jennings, Maria Cardona, former Harris Communications Director, Jamal Simmons, and Paul Begala. Jamal, what do you make of how things are going right now? Obviously, this is sort of a honeymoon phase. Clearly, former President Trump is honing his attack lines and, unleashing them full on.
Yeah, they're trying to figure it out. And we've seen Donald Trump in the past go out in public and try to work these lines with the crowd and see what he gets the response from. So we'll see how that shakes out. The difference with the Harris campaign is they're not waiting around for Donald Trump to figure out his attack lines. They're going right at Donald Trump and talking about his 34 convictions and talking about the problems he's had with being found liable for fraud and all the other problems for the Trump campaign. Now, what is interesting to me today is we've seen the vice president sort of get into her own lane. Now, it's an adjacent lane to President Biden's lane, but it's her own lane. We saw an ad that had a lot more energy in it, or a campaign launch video with the Beyonce song. We saw her do this event with Netanyahu, or right after with Netanyahu. And there she said something that was a little bit different than the president. She said that it's important for Israel to defend itself, but it's also important how Israel defends itself, and talked about the Palestinian plight kind of at the same time. She talked about the tragedy of October 7th. A lot of people will hear that and notice that that is something that they really wanted to hear from a Democratic president. And then lastly, she's also talking about it's not just important to get to do well or to get by economically, but it's important to do better than that. And so she's really leaning in on the work that is left to do for people to get ahead in the country, not just get by.
Paul, I mean, you've worked on a lot of campaigns. What do you make of this one? And it's interesting to me that it's most of the same people that were on, running the Biden campaign, and yet the feeling and the energy behind it certainly does seem a lot different in just the space of a couple of days.
It does, and it is because of Kamala Harris, and she brings all this energy and dynamism, and by the way, I think that's what DEI means, doesn't it? Doesn't it mean dynamic, energetic, and inspirational? If that's it, then that's what she is. Here's the thing I noticed from that clip, the talk after she met with the Prime Minister of Israel. I've worked for President Clinton, who's the greatest political talent in my lifetime. I worked for Obama's reelection. He's a genius. Politicians make about 75% of the mistakes for their campaign in the first 25% of the race. This is why it's not bad that we have these long campaigns in America as a campaign manager, because they screw up when they start, and then they get their footing and they get better at it. Kamala Harris has been a presidential candidate this time around for 96 hours. She walked into the most vexing, complicated, difficult, impossible problem on earth, the Israeli-Palestinian problem. And she handled it with comfort, with command, I thought she was terrific. So that's a heck of a trial by fire for a candidate who's been running for 4 days.
I want to play something that former GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley told Jake Tapper regarding that DEI hire attack.
It's not helpful. Look, I mean, we're talking about a liberal senator who literally has not accomplished very much. And what she was given, she didn't do much with. You don't need to talk about what she looks like or what gender she is to talk about that. The American people are smarter than that.
Do you expect to hear more of that, the DEI hire, other sort of, racist tropes or sexist remarks?
I absolutely do, Anderson. I don't think Republicans, especially under Trump and J.D. Vance, can help themselves. And I think it's more than just that they were caught flat-footed because of President Biden dropping out and Vice President Kamala Harris taking his place as the presidential nominee. I think it has to do with who she is and, frankly, what she looks like. We know Donald Trump is a racist. We know he's a sexist. We know he's a misogynist. And so to have that wrapped into this formidable, incredibly competent, accomplished woman who also happens to be very attractive, I think explodes his mind and explodes the minds of his MAGA acolytes because they don't know how to run against her. And they are demonstrating that every single day when they make those ridiculous comments. But that's who they are at their core. That is what is in their DNA. And I think it also underscores what a dumb pick I think J.D. Vance was for their ticket, because he exacerbates that, especially when he talks about reproductive women's rights, when he talks about the whole cat lady thing. And I don't think that's going away, because even though they have to get their caucus together and tell them not to talk about like that to women, that is who they are at their core, and they're not going to be able to help themselves.
Scott, you've been very clear over the last couple of days that the whole DEI hire line is not something as a Republican you think is smart for them to do, that they should stick to the record, as you see it, of the vice president and certainly Joe Biden. Is that something, I mean, when you hear, Trump calling in to Fox and replaying basically the insults he used in 2016 and 2020. I mean, nasty, calling her garbage now, a lunatic, she's going to destroy America. Isn't this just a replay of everything we've ever heard from him?
Well, I'm looking at a video before we went on the air tonight from the campaign that came out 2 hours ago, and it had nothing to do with any of this DEI stuff, had nothing to do with race and gender, and had everything to do with her record as senator.
But I'm talking about what your candidate is actually the words that are actually coming out of his mouth.
Well, first of all, it's not my candidate. I work here. I don't work for the campaign.
Okay,
Second, look, he is going to have to hone a message. He did get into this record that she has at his last rally, and he seems to be familiar with the greatest policy hits of Kamala Harris. And there's plenty, senator, liberal, presidential candidate, very liberal, and as a vice president, a failure right alongside Joe Biden. He knows it. I think he's internalizing it, and the campaign certainly knows what they have to do. If you look at the video products they're putting out tonight, he is going to have to stay disciplined on this because it will take them off message, and it will hurt them if he doesn't. That's on his shoulders, but it's quite obvious to me the campaign knows the message they have to use. They've got it circulating tonight, and I suspect you're going to see it in wide distribution in the days ahead.
Jamal, we mentioned former President Obama is expected to endorse her soon. Do you expect him to be out there? I mean, is this going to be like all hands on deck for many months, or is it sort of just in the final weeks he does a few big rallies?
The Democrats kind of have a embarrassment of riches right now, right? Because you've got President Obama who's going to come out and endorse her. We've already seen President Biden dominate the day with these meetings with Netanyahu. And then we see Vice President Harris, who's going to be out in the campaign trail getting her own attention. While Donald Trump's kind of sitting by himself in Mar-a-Lago, I'm not sure what he's doing until he meets with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but you've got 2 or 3 people who are out there. So I expect you're going to see him do more of this. But here's the thing about Vice President Harris. She's kind of got her own lane. President Obama was the first person of color to run, but she's got her own lane here. And I think one of the things that I saw when I was with her, she met with labor members all over the country. So we're now seeing the Laborers International come out and endorse her. We saw her at the AFT, the teachers union, today, and they've endorsed her. They're the first union to endorse her. So she's got this real focus on middle-class families, working-class families, and how they're going to get ahead in the country. And I think that is going to be a very important thing for her as she moves forward.